Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 80 with Oliver Harrington, the lead academy sports scientist at Reading. Ollie, how's things?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, it's just stuck inside, but enjoying the sunshine as much as I can. Yep, all good.
I think the weather's come at a good time, mate, hasn't it? Just to keep everyone a bit entertained in this period.
Yeah, definitely. It adds a little smile to your face whenever you wake up and you see the sunshine. It's good.
Definitely, mate. So just take us through, Ollie. Just mention your current role. Let's go through your career so far. Let's see where you've been and what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I'm the under-23s, lead academy sports scientist focused with the under-23s at Reading Football Club. I've only ever been at the one club. I've only ever been at Reading. I did a degree down at Bournemouth University in sports psychology and coaching sciences. And one of the main reasons I chose that degree was I actually had the opportunity to do a placement year. So I did my 2 years down in Bournemouth and then was lucky enough to secure a placement at Reading, working under Ed Franklin with the under-18s, which was brilliant. Really enjoyed. And then went back to do my final year at university, and this was in 2012 when I graduated. Was when the EPPP all kicked off. So there was the opportunity for a job became available. So I applied and was lucky enough to get it. And that was working with the under-9s to under-16s, and that was good. Really good. I worked for 3 years with the 9s to 16s before then making the jump up to the under-23s, and I've been with the under-23s for the past 5 years now. So yeah, learned a lot over the 8 years now that I've been there. Worked with some really good people, and obviously, like I just mentioned, Ed Franklin was pivotal in all of that, and learned a lot of the stuff that I now do today from him. So yeah, that's where I'm up to at the moment. Not too interested in terms of changing clubs, but yeah, definitely learned a lot of my time at Reading.
And we just had a little chat off air, and I wish I'd have recorded it because we went into a bit more detail than what we probably should have done without recording it. But we spoke about I'll start that again. We talked about the current circumstances with players, and obviously players working from home and training from home. But it was just interesting when we were talking because we were saying about the 18s and the 23s basically having to be ready for the end of this season now, which is possibly something that wouldn't have happened otherwise, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've when this all kicked off, we were fairly quick to get sort of programs out to our players. We sort of set them up with an initial 3-week sort of program, similar sort of goals in mind, but some of the exercises might change slightly. The gym programs would change slightly just to keep it interesting for them. And then it sort of continued on. And with the government now saying there's going to be another period of sort of 3 weeks lockdown, we've actually taken the initiative to put our players on a bit of a deload week, 2-week deload. So they're going to be not receiving anything from us for the next 2 weeks. Now, what we would say to that is still to encourage them to go out and do something. Obviously, going outside is great for your mental health, and we don't want people cooped up inside and sort of not doing anything. So we've said every day, go out with your family, go for a walk, go for a cycle. But we're not placing too much stress upon actually going out and going for a run or doing the fitness work that we've asked them to do. After that initial 2 weeks of downtime, we'll then ask them to do the first week back would be quite a light week. And I guess it's similar to sort of starting the off-season program that we would have given them at the start of last off-season, which will start with a week of just nice light exercises, building them back up. Week 2 being a little bit more strenuous, and then week 3, as much as we can, preparing them for when they are likely to come back for this mini pre-season, if you like. And then, yeah, I guess we go from there. Ideally, you would have a longer pre-season to build up for games, but I think everybody's in the same boat, and you just got to roll with what you can. So yeah, I think that 2 weeks down, then another 3-week build up, and then we'll hopefully be back in to work with the players again, which I'm looking forward to.
The uncertainty is a tough bit at the moment, isn't it? Because I think if we could have started the lockdown period and obviously known the weeks and everything, we could have treated it in a very structured way.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you guys are treating this now as like the off-season period. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I was listening to podcast a couple of weeks ago, and some people were, when they initially went into lockdown, they treated that as their downtime. We decided not to do that. But not saying that's right or that's wrong. We decided to keep the boys ticking over because we weren't sure when we were going to come back in, and our thoughts were we could be back in at any moment. We just got to keep them going. But now this period of an extra 3 weeks at least, we decided to let the players have a bit of rest, and then build up again from there. But like you just said, it's uncertain times and no one really knows. So it's crazy.
We just touched on before we recorded something else that we should have recorded, but you just talked about the benefits of this period as well. So there's a lot of things that are going on right now, isn't there?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. It seems as though everybody's come out and is producing webinars, which I think is only going to improve the industry. It seems as though a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, people were not as open to releasing information, and people wanted to keep stuff for themselves to try and just get an edge that way. But it seems as though now everybody's just come together and said, right, this is what we're doing. I hope it helps. And there's been some really, really, really good stuff. There's been some brilliant stuff that I've definitely taken from a few webinars. But at the same time, it also reaffirms sort of what you're doing as well. So some of the stuff I've been listening to, you actually think about, well, yeah, we're doing that as well. So we are along the same lines. That's great. But then you do pick up a few different bits of information here and there, which can only improve your practice when you come back in and get back out on the grass, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it's a time where it's been nice to see so much, or so many people put so much out there, and there's loads of opportunities to make use of this extra time, isn't there, from all the things that have been going on. It's great to see. In terms of your role, Ollie, with the under 23 focus, so let's just touch on some of the challenges that you face in that. With that group, because they're between two areas really, aren't they? Between that development phase in the academy and then that performance phase in terms of first team. So what are some of the key challenges that you face?
I guess structure is one of the hardest things. We try and stick to a structure as much as we can in the under 23s. Our typical week would look like match day, recovery, and then an off day. And then we would usually have sort of 2 working days. So we would have an intensive day or a startup day. We would then have an extensive day where we would try and hit sort of bigger numbers, bigger max, high intensity numbers, max speed. And then the way we like to work is have a day off and then match prep before the game. So we would have day off, match day -2. And wherever we can, we do try and stick to that. But the under 23 schedule is so different that there isn't always that structure. At under 18s level, you play your Saturday games, and then you've got your week to build up. Same with first team level. Even at championship, you know you're going to play Saturday, Tuesday, or Saturday, sometimes even Wednesday. So you can start to plan a little bit more. At under 23 level, there isn't as much structure as that. You could be playing across a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a Monday. You might then have cup games during the week if we're part of a county competition as well. They're often played on a Wednesday evening or sometimes a Thursday evening. So it's just trying to stick to that plan as much as you can, which can sometimes potentially be difficult. You've also got the challenges of the end goal for the under 23s or academy football is to get players into that first team. So you are always trying to push players into the first team as much as you can. Now that sometimes means if you were due to have a day off, but the first team need players in, that is the priority. It's just then working with the coaches and working with the players to say, do we just get one player in who's needed? Do we bring the whole squad in? Is it necessary to bring the whole squad in? But yeah, the end goal is to get players into the first team. So dealing with these challenges is part of the job. And I guess I learned that from working with the 9s to 16s. That you go from working with 150 odd players through under 9s all the way through up to under 16s, up to 10 or 15 different coaches, physiotherapists, loads of different people that are involved. So there's constant challenges that you have to deal with. But I guess that's part of being a sports science practitioner or being in the role that we're in. you have to relish that. I think you have to enjoy doing that. I'll be honest, when I first started, the first couple of years, it was difficult, and I'd let stuff get to me. Stuff would change, and it would be difficult to deal with. But I think that's one thing that I learned from Ed, was just, you've got to be able to deal with it, and you've got to be able to change and roll with it. And contingency planning is key, always.
Yeah, I think it was Finton White who spoke recently on the podcast from Birmingham. He's in a similar position, obviously 23s, and he spoke about having the different plans in place and being able to be flexible. And I think, and again, we touched on it just before, I think this period when we do get back into the season is probably going to be one of those times when players are getting pulled from pillar to post, aren't they? There might be 18s going to first teams, 23s being used in squads, not playing and just travelling and all the rest of it. So what are some key considerations that you've got to make for that period? Is it a case of just doing what you're doing, but just on a, I suppose, like a more reactive scale in terms of there might be just more of it going on?
I think it's just having a plan in place is absolutely crucial. And I think having relationships with people, again, is so key in what you do. If you're narrow-minded and thinking, this is what I want to do, this is what's going to work, you won't get anywhere. You need to be able to build relationships and have that communication with people to, as much as you can, understand what people need. So like I mentioned, the first team are absolutely key. So we've got to make sure that we have that communication with them to find out what they want. That's then communicating it with the coaches, then communicating it with the player. But you just got to prepare the players as much as you can for whatever eventuality might actually happen. It's not easy, but again, you just got to prep players as much as you can and have that constant communication with the key stakeholders that this is what might potentially happen. The first team could go, who knows what their schedule is going to be. They could go into a really, really congested period, and hopefully, touch wood, there isn't any injuries. But with what's been happening, I think unfortunately injuries might be inevitable. So we've got to make sure that these younger lads, these academy players, are ready for that step up and ready to help out wherever possible.
And again, we just spoke about it before, about having like the network of people that you can reach out to, and especially in this period that's so unknown for coaches. What are some of the discussions you've had? Have you reached out to your network to see the sort of approach that other people are going to take when they do get the green light?
Yeah, definitely. I know Finton really well. Like he worked at Reading for quite a few years. So I've been speaking with him, that's one of the things at Reading is there's been a lot of people in my 8 years. I've seen a lot of people sort of come and go. But that means that I now have a broader network to actually speak to people as well, which is great. So chatting with those guys, seeing what they're doing, a couple of people at Fulham, a few guys at Liverpool. It's really important to keep that communication with people to find out what people are doing. Everybody's situation is different, don't get me wrong, but there is definitely things you can take and you can apply, because it might just prevent that one extra player getting injured, or it might just get somebody back from rehab quicker, or anything like that. It's any ideas that you can get, and listening to some of the great webinars that have been out there. It's essential. So yeah, no, keeping communication is paramount to whatever you want to do.
I think it'd be great now, because we're going to touch on max effort work with your players. So reverting back into the normal world when we're allowed to see our players and work with them face to face. Like,
forgotten what it's like.
Feels strange talking about that, doesn't it? But when we do get back into that period, and obviously the approach that you guys have taken normally, max effort training and the implementation of max effort work with players, what's your sort of general approach? And then we'll go into a little bit more on specifics.
So we sort of get the warm up, if you like. That's the work that we get to do with our players. So we've over the years we've managed to progress it to sort of 20-25 minutes of actual work with the players. And like I mentioned, we'll have an intensive day and an extensive day. I know people sometimes have intensive, extensive speed days. It doesn't necessarily always work with our schedule. So we try to do our speed days on our extensive days. So we would look to try and get at least one max effort, if not two max efforts a week on max speed with our players. And that's sort of developed over the past couple of seasons. It would used to be immediately after the warm-up. So we would do a sort of 15-minute warm-up with the players and then ask them to do a sort of max effort, a max speed run, sorry. But over the years, we found that actually getting players to do the warm-up and then doing a passing drill or a possession drill and then coming back out to us just to ensure that they are fully warm, because it sometimes might be that you could put the best warm-up on in the world. Not every player enjoys a warm-up, and I'm happy to admit that. They would rather just be playing football. You could do the best warm-up in the world, but it might be that some players don't necessarily adhere to it as much as you would like. So letting them do that passing drill and ensure that they are fully prepared to do that max speed, they will then come back to me and do a sort of flying 50-meter sprint. So sort of build up over 10-15 meters and then ask them to sprint as quick as they can. And we've found that really helps. We're lucky enough to have the live GPS system. So we use Catapult, and we've got the live GPS system, and we found that players really buy into it as well. So immediately, as soon as they've done that run, they're coming over to ask, what speed did I get? What speed did I get? And so are the coaches as well. They are really interested in what the players are doing. It's lucky that we've got that, because we can say to players, right, this is your max speed. We're looking for a 95% of your max speed. And straight away, we can tell them whether or not they've done it or not. So yeah, we found that the majority of our max speed efforts come within our extensive sessions rather than actual match days. And we would look to try and, as the seasons, or as we're progressing further now, we'd rather it come within the football specific context. So at the moment, it's very isolated in that they come out and they do their max speed run with me. We want to try and put it more into a football specific context. Listening to Laura Bowen's webinar a couple of weeks ago, they've got some really, really good drills that allows players to reach those max speeds with the footballs involved, which is only going to engage players even more. So yeah, that's how we've incorporated it and found some good results from it.
And speaking to a lot of coaches, I think that is the general idea with the max speed work, is that it is going to be integrated into the football practice more and more. I think coaches are looking to do that. I think that your comment on the warm-ups is I think that's it just makes sense, because the amount of times you'll watch a warm-up on TV or you'll be at a game and you think that if you take the overall view of the players, you think that some are going to be prepared for what they're going to be going into, but some aren't. So I think bouncing into that football practice and then coming back to it is a really good approach, because it does give them, I bet you see the shift, don't you? Where as soon as they get the balls out, the mentality shift, that they're going to be moving a bit more purpose and intent going behind the movement rather than just going through the motions in terms of warm-up.
Yeah, exactly. It's I've been taking warm-ups for, like I said, nearly 8 years now, and I've definitely, I like to think that would have improved. I might have gone backwards, who knows? But I like to think that they're at a level that I think I can get players to perform at max speed, but that's only if you get 100% buy-in from the player. And some players are naturally just not fussed. They would rather just play football, which I think you have to understand. Like I mentioned, there's not too much point getting phased by it, because you could just fixate on it and think, he's so-and-so's not doing it. He's not doing it. What can I do? Whereas you just think, right, okay, he doesn't necessarily enjoy it. Let's change what we do and let's get them into that football specific drill to ensure that he is going to be working at a higher intensity. And then he can come back to me for 10 minutes where we can do that max speed run. And he's going to be still avoiding that injury risk. Because there's nothing worse than asking a player to sprint at max speed and you see him pull up with a hamstring injury and you think, oh, Jesus.
Because that is the important part of that, isn't it? The exposure side of it. And obviously we do want to develop speed, and we'll go into that in a second, because that's something I want to touch on as well. But the exposure is the important bit, isn't it? Which is obviously where like a lot of the research is behind that we need to give that exposure to players, but it has to be at that level too, doesn't it? There has to be that intent behind it, and if players aren't pushing it, and we all can think of players in the public eye that will go through drills at half-assed, and they're not going to get that exposure really until they go into the game.
No, it's I did a presentation to the sports science guys in our team last week just on our data from max speed. So I pulled out all the efforts that we've hit throughout the season, individuals, positions, where we hit them, like what sessions is it that we're hitting them in, and it's so crucial. You look at all the research now that's saying it's not only does it help you to improve your max speed overall, but it's actually helping you to avoid injury. But you need to have that intent to sprint as quick as you can. Now, obviously, there's going to be potential barriers like the weather. If it's absolutely teeming it down with rain, you're not going to reach a max speed. But I think the intent to actually do it and run as quick as you can on that day will have a beneficial effect. Things like whether you've got surface, if it's, like I said, if it's winter and it's the ground is as soft as anything, you're not going to hit a max speed. I think motivation is a big one as well. Everybody's situation is different. It could be contractual. It could be an argument with a teammate. It could be family life. It could be all sorts. If you're involved in a fit non-starter session, so you haven't played in the game the day before, you're a bit annoyed, but we still need you to hit that max speed effort. It's tough. Not only are you asking a player to hit to join in an extra session with 4 or 5 players, you're asking them to run at a max effort. But I think, again, it comes down to communication and your relationship with the player. You've got to explain the reasons why. You've got to explain that you need to do this in order to improve your game, to improve your performance, to improve your max speed, but also to decrease your risk of injury. And again, that comes down to your relationships with the player and your communication with the player. I think it's really important.
I think that's some really good practical advice, and obviously something that's come with experience, because I think we all go into that role thinking that we can get everyone through some max effort work, we can improve everyone's technique, get everyone faster. But at the end of the day, you get a player that doesn't necessarily rely on the speed in the game as well. It might be a slightly different type of player, and we can think of players that have played at the top level in Champions League and World Cups that you'd probably say that weren't the quickest at all, but have got very good players behind them. So are those guys really going to prioritise speed? But so it's accepting, isn't it? It's accepting that we can hit some of the group and we can get some really good results, and the others, what can we get out of them?
Yeah, exactly. But it's you're not always going to have the best relationship with every player, but again, as long as you can communicate with them, and again, you have to be adaptable as well. You have to have soft skills with players. To one player might need you to have a bit of a go at him or a bit of a push at him, whereas another player, you might need to put your arm around him and say, listen, come on, we need you to do this for this reasons. And I guess, again, like you said, it does come from experience. I remember when I first started and all these numbers are flying around and you want players to hit this and, oh, he's not hitting that, right, we need to get him out and do more. But actually you need to think more on the social side of it as well and think, what's he going through? Why is he not doing it? And again, yeah, it does all come from experience. But one of the great points that Harry Routledge mentioned a couple of weeks ago on the podcast was players are people as well. They are human beings. They're not robots. You've got to be able to actually engage with them and understand that they are a human being. And yeah, you've got to listen and talk to them.
No, definitely. That relationship's really key, isn't it? We talk a lot about relationships with coaches, but the relationship with players and understanding exactly that is that you've got a group of 16, you've got a group of 16 individuals with individual lives and individual things circumstances going on. You don't know, do you? So getting to know your players like that. And I think we've all had players that we haven't had the best relationship with, but then on the flip side of that, we've had relationships with players that have been amazing. And it's just managing both ends of the spectrum, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, I'll be the first to say that I had some really good relationships with some players. You asked them to jump, they'd say how high, and there was some that didn't necessarily buy into what you were doing. Now that doesn't mean that you completely don't work with them. I think you have to be able to adapt and trial a new way with a player, or maybe work with them, if it's in the gym, work with them on their own rather than in a group setting, or just have a one-to-one chat with a player, or get a key stakeholder that's invested heavily in their career to actually come in. I remember having a chat with a player, and he actually brought in one of his family members to discuss stuff with me, and I was more than happy to do that. I got the data all up, and I said, listen, you're not hitting what we need you to hit. You're trying to get into the first team. These are the numbers of the first team at a certain position, and unfortunately, you're not just at that stage. So, what is it? What's holding you back? And then they start to open up a little bit more because they feel more comfortable, and then you can develop a relationship that way. So it's not just one size fits all. You've got to be able to think outside the box a little bit. And I know it's cliche to say, but you do have to. You have to think of different ways to communicate with players, and develop different ways of engaging them and helping them out.
That's the real skill of a practitioner, isn't it? And I spoke recently with Shane Murphy about it, because obviously he's gone from a position of being involved with players day to day to now working. I know it's only a small part of his business, but he works individually with some players as well, and it's a very different sort of point of view that you get. And time's an issue as well, isn't it? Because we don't have all the time in the world. You do still have to get the best results for all of your players. Yeah,
no, 100%. It is tough, and it is a lot of work. But it's how much you want to. It's how much you want to actually help the players, I guess. Now I don't mean that negatively to say that some people don't want to help other people. But I guess it goes down to the team that you've got around you as well. If you've got a team around you that can afford to help you out, then it reduces the workload a little bit. And I'm lucky enough that the team that we've got in the sports science department and the medical department as well are fantastic and pivotal to everything that we do as a department at Reading. So
awesome. And then I said as well, we're going to touch on. So we talked about exposure, max effort, speed exposure. But where does mechanics fit into that? So how much time do you spend working on running mechanics with players, and where does that fit in?
So we try and get some sort of mechanics to within most of our sort of warm-ups. So that would be, we'd break our warm-ups down to be like a pulse raiser. We'd then go through some dynamic stretches and preparation that way. And then if we were going into a max speed day, we would touch on it briefly for sort of 3, 4, 5 minutes, but we don't spend too long on it. I think it's a real difficult area. I think it's very important that you have some sort of impact upon the mechanics, but you don't want to spend too long with the limited time that you have, spending too long on those mechanics. So we would spend sort of 3, 4, 5 minutes in trying to improve them in our extensive sessions, or if it's your intensive and we're looking for more accelerations, we'd focus on acceleration mechanics or deceleration or change of direction, things like that. And we touch on it in the gym as well. So as part of our gym sessions, we do a bit of a warm up, but we try and throw little snippets into the gym sessions as well. And Dave Breakspear, our head of S&C, is brilliant at incorporating all that into his gym sessions that he gets the players to do. So it's important to touch upon. I think it's definitely something we incorporate and try and fit within our program.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we obviously understand the real benefits of moving efficiently, but at the same time, you could spend a lot of time doing it, couldn't you? And it's time that could probably be spent doing other things and being a little bit more effective with the time. So it is finding that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, you could spend hours and hours and hours and hours on working on running mechanics, but at the end of the day, you only get 20, 25 minutes to work with a player. Is it best spent actually letting them do more acceleration efforts or doing more max speed efforts. You can if you keep drip feeding it in, and there's been a lot of talk about sort of minimal effective dose and things like that, and I think that's what we try and do. We try and do something little and often, and again, that just comes down to not just being out on the field doing the mechanics with players. It's also showing them. I've been in the gym and shown like videos of top athletes to players, and they're like, oh, that's how I need to be doing it. And some people learn differently. Some people need one-to-one time, so you spend a little bit of time. If they are in the gym and you've got a group of 8, 9 or 10 players and they're working on their mechanics, you can work one-to-one with them. Some players need it to watch other people, and some players need to just experience it. So that's how we like to do it. Yeah, I think it seems to work quite well for us.
I think it's an interesting area, isn't it? It's one thing I've been thinking about recently, because you see a lot of players moving very differently, don't you? And there's some players out there that you look at and think that they move that, well, you probably call it poor, like the movement's quite poor, but they're really effective. Yeah. And sometimes you got to stand back and you think, hang on, the sort of principles of what I'm trying to teach are going out the window, because this player is quick, but they don't move well. In my eyes, like, if I put my technical glasses on. So what, in terms of like teaching players with different styles of movement, are you just giving them maybe an outcome? Are you saying that we want to accelerate from here to here as fast as possible, and you sort of find a way, or are you breaking it down into stages?
Try to break it down. So say, we want you to get from here to here as quick as possible. This is what you're currently doing. And again, we film all of our under 23s and under 18 sessions. So again, that's been a really useful tool to show players, yes, you are quick, but could you do this slightly differently? Again, I was listening to Cam Joss's webinar the other week, which was just brilliant. It broke stuff down really well, and I can't wait to get back and actually use some of the things that he was talking about. But I think allowing players to actually get exposures is really, really important. So making sure that they can, if you're doing acceleration efforts, do sort of 5 or 6 or even up to sort of 8 efforts. But then also drip feeding those small, could you do this better? Could you do this better? Have you tried for the next sort of couple of efforts, just think about punching your knee through, pushing the back foot away, or if you're accelerating, try and stay as low as you can, drive the arms, and you've got to be careful you're not giving them too many points, because then they're just going to get bogged down and they're actually there to play football. You'd rather than focus on the technical, tactical points that the coach is going to make, but can you give them a few points to think about their acceleration, or think about their max speed, or think about their stopping, cutting, change of direction, just to help them out as much as you can. It might be that they take 1 or 2 bits from it, and it has a 1% difference, but you've effectively done your job there, and you've improved that player, which hopefully can allow them to get a contract or whatever. You don't know, but as long as you're doing something and it's backed up by some of the research, I think it's great. And that's one thing that we've been doing at Reading, which has been brilliant. The sort of couple of months before we broke up, we were having our sort of own internal CPD events where we'd pick a paper, or we'd look at a video, discuss it, or if it was around running mechanics or anything like that, we'd go into the gym, we'd practice it, we'd say, right, this is what we want to do. We'd trial things out ourselves, and then we'd put it into our own warm-ups and talk about it whenever one of us had done it. So if Harry, working with the under 18s, had done it, we'd sit down and discuss it in the afternoon. Did it work? Did it not? What did? What didn't? Who did well? And I think that's been really beneficial for me as well. Actually working and talking as a team, talking back to relationships. It's not just the coaches, it's not just the players, it's actually the people you work with within your sports science department. You want to all be working along the same page and pushing towards that end goal that is one goal, which has been which I've found really interesting. And one thing that we've done within this lockdown is every sort of Friday morning we've done a Zoom meeting where we've discussed the paper. We've read it sort of 3 or 4 days before and recorded the meeting, and just had a chat about it. What was everybody's thoughts? What were some of the good points? What were some of the sort of points you'd like to change? How can we implement it? What are some of the potential barriers to implementing it? And that's been brilliant. That's been really useful.
That culture that it seems that you guys have got going there, because we talk about culture a lot for players, but not so much in terms of a sports science department so much. And that sounds great. That sounds like it's a culture where you can really progress as a practitioner.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. We've like I mentioned, I've been there 8 years. There's been a lot of people come in, a few people go, but I think again going back to the person that spearheaded all of that was Ed Franklin. He was absolutely paramount in everything that I've done, but he's always employed good people. You've got to have good knowledge. You've got to be able to apply that knowledge, but you've also got to be a good person as well. And again, it goes back to sort of his boss, which was a guy called Eamon Dolan, who was just incredible, and an absolutely incredible man, who was the academy manager for many years, and he was absolutely incredible. So it's not just about being a good practitioner; you've got to be a good person, and I think that's been sort of carried on, and we're trying to keep that culture going of continuing to learn always. You're always continuing to learn, and you always want to learn off different people. Now, just because I've been there 8 years doesn't mean that I start to say that I know everything by any stretch of the imagination. I'm learning off all the other guys all at the same time, and it is a good culture, and it's again, that's down to just great people.
I'm sure there'll be a few coaches listening that are the academy coaches that maybe there's just them and nobody else, or even first team, and thinking, I wish I had that.
Yeah, it's again, I've mentioned it before, and I think it's been really successful for me, is having relationships and building relationships. It's essential for me. Having good relationships with people builds trust, builds communication, which at the end of the day is only going to improve your knowledge and your application, but also the player's chance of success. Because my experience might be different to somebody else's experience. Helps me to see it in a different light. Helps me to see, oh, actually, that player might not have seen it like that. So it's just all about taking as much experience and getting the best relationships that you can to improve, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And just to wrap up, mate, am I right in saying that you guys are going to be moving training grounds, and there's plans in place for that?
Yes, yeah. So the training ground is currently being built, and hopefully finished very soon, which will be amazing. It'll be really, really good. We're currently all on one site, and we're all going to one site, but the academy and the first team all share a gym at the moment. But when we move into our new facility, there'll be a first team gym, there'll be an academy gym, which will change our practice, and we're already talking about that at the moment. So these discussions we have over Zoom, or when we're talking about papers, we're also discussing what can we do currently at Hogwood, but what can we do when we go into Bearwood. And it's really exciting. We're all coming up with different ideas, running it past people, and it's a really exciting time. So hopefully, whenever we move in there, it'll only improve our practice even more, and again improve the players' experiences and players' chances of success.
Awesome. We'll have to keep up to date with what's going on
100%.
down there, mate. Definitely. And then just
in
terms
100%.
of, if people have got any questions, Ollie, if they want to reach out and they want to grow their network as well, like they want to reach out to you and ask anything, is there a place to do that? Is Twitter the best, or is there anywhere else?
Yeah, perfect. So it's just at Ollie Harrington on Twitter, and then LinkedIn as well. If people want to have me on LinkedIn, I'll be more than happy to, as much as I can, get back to people. I like to, I'll chat with as many people that are willing to chat, and as long as I can get around to it, I'll definitely be more than happy to speak to people.
Perfect, mate. Well, I think that was great. I think there's so much good stuff in there, and I really appreciate you giving up your time.
No, thank you very much. I've been listening to all the podcasts, and you've had some unbelievable speakers and some really, really interesting guys with a lot more knowledge and experience than I have. So it's a privilege to be asked to come on. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
No problem at all, mate. And stay in touch, and when the season gets going, then best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.